All right, so let's dive right in. We're tackling something today that I think we can all relate to on one side or the other. That sometimes, shall we say, interesting world of parent-teenager communication. You know that feeling, right? Like when you get those rapid-fire texts from your mom, hi, hello, all within like 5 minutes. Yeah, we're going to unpack why that happens and what it says about how different generations connect. So whether you're, right in those teenage years or maybe you've just got some memorable flashbacks, this deep dive is for you. We're not just sharing funny stories, though. We're going deeper, looking at the psychology behind those classic parent behaviors, see if what they're trying to do actually matches what happens, the impact,
Yeah.
and hopefully give everyone some tips for smoother communication, whether you're the teen or the parent.
What always gets me is, most advice out there is all about fixing those little communication breakdowns, the surface stuff. We don't
Yeah.
often look at the bigger picture, like what's going on psychologically for both parents and teens.
Totally. And the stories we got from teens, wow, they really highlight this. One thing that pops up over and over is feeling judged or analyzed by their parents, even for stuff that seems totally normal to them. Like one person said their parents were constantly on them about their friends' looks, their music, everything. It got so bad that they were afraid to even listen to music for years, terrified of being judged. And their taste wasn't even that out there. It just shows you how, even with good intentions, things can really backfire.
Makes you think, do parents even realize they're doing this?
Mhm.
One idea is this psychology concept called projection. It's where, without knowing it, we put our own fears and values onto other people.
So, like, a parent who's insecure about their social standing might freak out about their kids' friends, even if those friends are perfectly fine.
It's a classic pattern, yeah. Another piece of the puzzle is that whole generation gap in how we communicate. A lot of parents, they grew up in a time when talking openly about feelings, that wasn't really encouraged. So their go-to move is to offer solutions or advice, even when what the teen really needs is just to be heard.
Which actually connects to another big theme that came up. Teens feeling like their parents are suffocating them with this need to talk it out, even when they've said they need space. That classic, I want to be left alone, met with, let's discuss this.
Total clash of communication styles, yeah. But it also shows something deeper. The anxiety parents feel about giving their teens some freedom. Think about it. From day one, parents are responsible for their kids' safety and well-being. Letting go of that, even a little, can be really scary for them.
So instead of seeing a teen needing space as like healthy independence, some parents see it as a rejection or like something's wrong. It's like they're programmed to fix things, even when the problem is just normal teenage development.
Exactly. And that brings us to a super important point. The difference between what you intend to do and the actual impact it has. A parent might genuinely believe they're doing what's best. But if their actions over and over make the kid feel trapped, judged, not listened to, then the impact is negative no matter what they intended.
That's a big one to remember. Good intentions aren't always enough. We have to look at how our communication is actually affecting the other person. And this story really illustrates that point. A listener told us about how they finally got this amazing job, full-time, good pay, but it was a 30-minute drive away.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
You probably do. Their parents completely freaked out about the distance and made them call their manager to quit.
That is textbook enmeshment, where the lines between parent and child get all blurred. The parent starts seeing the kid's choices as reflecting on them, their own success or failure. So they feel this urge to control everything, even good decisions.
And get this, after making them quit, the parents then got mad that they quit and made them call back and beg for the job back, all within like 10 minutes. What kind of message does that send?
It screams, I'm not consistent, and totally breaks down trust. The teen learns that being honest is risky because their parents' reactions are all over the place, driven by their own anxiety, not by wanting to understand.
Ugh, that's just rough. But before we get too down on things, our listeners also shared stories about parents who, like, totally nail this open communication thing. One person's mom had this rule: tell me the truth, you won't get in trouble, and I won't be mad at you. I'll be mad at the situation, and you better help me fix it.
That's brilliant. It takes the focus off blame and punishment and puts it on working together, like a team. It says, hey, your feelings matter. But it also sets clear expectations.
Exactly. And this person said that being able to talk openly with their mom made their relationship so much stronger. They never felt like they had to hide stuff or lie. They knew they could talk about anything without being judged.
That's what we call secure attachment. Knowing you've got a safe place to go when things get tough. It's a foundation for trust and being able to handle whatever life throws at you.
Yeah.
But even in the best parent-teen relationships, things can get, well, A little quirky sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like this story about a teen who really wanted a tacky flamingo party. But their mom, oh man, she was not having it. Thought it was way too trashy.
I can just picture this mom.
Oh, you have no idea. So the party never happened. But get this. Every year since then, the mom has bought this person something flamingo themed. They have like 7-yard flamingos now, plus tons of other stuff.
Eh.
What's the psychology behind that?
I'd say it's this interesting mix of boundaries and love. The mom stuck to her guns on the party, but she also found this creative way to connect with her kids' interests, even if it was a little, tongue-in-cheek.
That's so cool. Shows that even when parents disagree, they can still find ways to show love and understanding. But sometimes, even those attempts to connect can backfire, especially when we're talking about feelings. One listener shared that whenever they tried to open up to their mom about something upsetting, their mom would instantly go into this whole guilt trip about being a terrible mother. Talk about emotional whiplash.
Classic emotional hijacking. The parent's own emotional baggage gets triggered, and they react in a way that shuts down the conversation, instead of actually engaging with what the teen is feeling.
It's like the parents' emotions suddenly become way more important than the teen's, which just makes the teen feel totally invalidated. And unfortunately, that pattern can do real damage over time.
Absolutely. When teens learn that expressing their emotions just leads to guilt trips or defensiveness, they start to keep things bottled up. They might withdraw, become more secretive, or even turn to unhealthy ways of coping with their emotions.
So what's the answer? How can parents respond in a way that builds connection and understanding, even when the conversation gets tough?
It all starts with knowing yourself. Parents need to figure out what their own triggers are, what sets them off, and then be willing to work on managing those reactions. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present and mindful in those interactions.
So instead of instantly blaming yourself or getting defensive, take a breath, check in with how you're feeling, and remind yourself that your teen's feelings are real, even if they trigger something in you.
Exactly. And try reflecting back what you're hearing. It sounds like you're feeling really hurt and frustrated right now. I want to understand what's going on. Just that simple validation can be so powerful.
It shows your teen that you're taking their feelings seriously, that you're there to listen and support, not judge or criticize. But there's another common pitfall we hear about all the time, the dreaded parental lecture. You know, when a teen just needs to vent about their day, and suddenly their parent transforms into a walking self-help book, offering unsolicited advice and life lessons. It's like they can't help but try to fix everything.
And that's where active listening comes in. It's about truly being present, paying attention to both the words and the emotions behind them, and responding in a way that makes your teen feel heard and understood, not jumping into problem-solving mode right away.
So how do we get better at active listening? What are some practical tips parents can use to shift from lecturing to really listening?
Well, there are a bunch of effective techniques, and we'll get into those in just a bit. We'll talk about how to tell when a teen just needs to vent versus when they actually want advice, and how to respond in a way that strengthens the connection instead of shutting down the conversation. One technique that can really help with active listening is called reflective listening. It's basically mirroring back what your teen is saying to make sure you get it and to show them you're really paying attention.
So instead of saying, well, if you just studied harder, you wouldn't have failed that test, you'd say something like, it sounds like you're really disappointed and frustrated about that test score. Tell me more about what happened.
Exactly. You're validating their feelings without judging and creating a space for them to process their own thoughts and emotions. Another key part of active listening is asking open-ended questions. Instead of leading questions that kind of steer the conversation a certain way, try things like, what's going on with that? Or how are you feeling about all of this?
It's like you're inviting them to open up and share their perspective without pushing your own assumptions on them. And sometimes the best thing you can say is simply, I hear you, I understand you're feeling insert emotion here. That must be really hard.
That's empathy in action. Putting yourself in your teen's shoes and trying to understand their experience, even if you don't necessarily agree with their choices or point of view. And remember, you don't always have to have all the answers or offer solutions. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be there to listen, a safe space for your teen to work through their emotions and figure things out on their own.
That can be tough for parents, especially those who are used to being the fixer in the family. But it's about helping teens develop their own coping skills and problem-solving abilities, which are essential for navigating adult life. And speaking of navigating, one thing that can make parent-teen communication extra tricky is that whole generation gap thing. It's like they're speaking different languages sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just slang or technology either. We're talking about fundamental differences in how they see the world, how they process information, how they express themselves. Parents today grew up in a totally different social and cultural environment than their kids.
Right. Like I was reading that teenagers today are so much more comfortable communicating online than face to face.
Yeah.
They can craft the perfect message, edit it, really think about what they want to say before hitting send. There's a level of control there that you just don't have in a real-time conversation.
And that can lead to misunderstandings when parents try to force those face-to-face interactions.
Yeah.
For a teenager who's used to communicating through carefully curated texts or social media posts, a spontaneous conversation can feel super awkward and anxiety-inducing.
Like they're exposed and vulnerable, which makes them shut down or get defensive. And then you add in the fact that some parents might not be as tech savvy, trying to navigate social media and all that, which can create a whole other layer of frustration.
For sure. And it's not just technology. Social norms have changed too, like around being honest and vulnerable. Teenagers today are often encouraged to express their feelings and be open about their struggles, while their parents might have been taught that those things were weaknesses.
So you get this clash of expectations where teens are trying to be authentic and open, but their parents see it as complaining or being dramatic.
And that can lead to parents shutting down conversations or offering solutions before they've even grasped the problem. We see this a lot with mental health issues. A teen might try to talk to their parents about anxiety or depression, but the parents, coming from a generation where mental health was often stigmatized, might dismiss it as just a phase or tell them to toughen up.
And that can be incredibly invalidating for the teen who's already struggling. It reinforces the idea that they can't talk to their parents about these things, which can lead to isolation and even more distress.
It's a tough cycle to break.
Yeah.
But the good news is that more and more parents are realizing how important it is to validate their teens' emotional experiences, even if they don't fully understand them.
We heard a story that really illustrated this. It was about a mom who really made an effort to create a safe space for her daughter to talk about anything without fear of judgment or punishment.
What was her secret? How did she create that kind of trust and openness?
Well, she had this rule. If her daughter told her the truth, no matter what, she wouldn't get in trouble. They'd focus on understanding the situation and finding a solution together. Like that mom we talked about earlier who said, "I'll be mad at the situation, not at you."
Right. Such a simple but powerful shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It moves away from blame and punishment and towards collaboration and problem solving. And it empowers the teenager to own their choices and be part of the solution.
Exactly. And it sends the message that I trust you, I believe in you, and I'm here for you no matter what. That kind of unconditional love and support can make all the difference for a teenager, especially during those crazy adolescent years.
Absolutely. Adolescence is a time of massive change and uncertainty. Teenagers are trying to figure out who they are, what they believe in, where they fit in, and having a parent who's a steady and supportive presence can make that journey a whole lot smoother.
It's about recognizing that teenagers aren't just mini adults. They're complex individuals with their own unique thoughts, feelings, and perspectives. And the more we, as parents and as a society, can embrace and validate those perspectives, the stronger and healthier our relationships with teenagers will be.
It's about shifting from a mindset of control and correction to one of empathy and understanding. And that can be tough, especially for parents who are used to communicating a certain way, but the payoff is huge.
Totally. When we create that space for open and honest dialogue, we open the door to deeper connection, mutual respect, and ultimately a more fulfilling relationship with the teenagers in our lives. And sometimes the best way to bridge that communication gap is to simply laugh together.
You're right. Humor can be such a powerful tool for diffusing tension and building connection. Remember that story about the mom who rejected the tacky flamingo party, but then gifted her child flamingo-themed items every year after?
Oh, that was classic. It shows that even when you disagree, there's always room for a little lightheartedness and connection. And it reminds us that communication isn't just about sharing information, it's about expressing love, building relationships, and creating memories that will last a lifetime.
Exactly. And sometimes those memories come from the most unexpected places.
Yeah.
Like the time a teenager, totally frustrated, blurted out to their parents, "You just don't understand me." And the parent, instead of getting defensive, just said, "You're right, I don't. So tell me, what is it like to be you right now?"
Whoa, that changes everything. Instead of arguing or trying to prove a point, the parent is genuinely curious and inviting the teenager to share their experience. What an amazing way to shift the dynamic and open the door to real connection.
It reminds us that even the toughest conversations can be an opportunity for growth and understanding, as long as we're willing to come to them with open hearts and open minds. But as we've been talking about, parent-teen communication isn't always easy. There are times when things go off the rails, especially when emotions run high.
That's true. We've heard from listeners about those times when they try to open up to their parents about something that's bothering them, only to have the conversation taken over by the parent's own emotional reactions.
Right, like that story about the person whose mom would always respond with, "I'm such a terrible mother." Classic emotional hijacking.
Hmm.
And it totally shuts down the conversation.
So how do we help parents avoid those emotional traps and respond in a way that actually builds connection and understanding, even when the conversation gets tough? So we were talking about those times when conversations about feelings, especially between parents and teens, can go, well, a little off track.
Yeah, and we were just about to get into how parents can sidestep those conversational landmines. When those "I'm such a terrible mother" guilt trips start flying.
Because let's face it, no teenager wants to hear that when they're trying to share something important. It's like their experience gets totally pushed aside and it all becomes about the parent's emotional baggage.
Exactly. The parent's inner critic takes over, and their own insecurities and fears, they become the center of attention. The teen ends up feeling dismissed and unheard.
So what's the solution? How can parents learn to stay present and grounded even when those big feelings bubble up?
Well, the first step is pretty straightforward, but not always easy. It's self-awareness. Parents need to recognize their own emotional triggers, like what are those topics or situations that tend to send them into that spiral of guilt or defensiveness.
Once you're aware of your triggers, then you can start to develop strategies for managing them. It's like having a mental toolkit for those moments when you feel your emotions threatening to take over.
Precisely. And one of the most powerful tools you have is the pause. Instead of reacting impulsively, just take a moment to breathe. Check in with yourself. Remind yourself that your teen's feelings are valid even if they're bringing up something in you.
So instead of jumping right to a guilt trip, try saying something like, wow, this is a lot to take in. Give me a minute to really hear what you're saying.
That's a great example. It shows your teen that you're taking their feelings seriously, that you're making an effort to stay present, even if it's tough. And remember, you don't always have to have the perfect answer or the perfect solution. Sometimes the best thing you can do is simply validate their experience.
Like saying, it sounds like you're feeling really hurt and betrayed right now. That must be incredibly painful.
Exactly. You're acknowledging their emotions without judgment. You're not trying to fix things or downplay their experience. And once you've created that space of validation, then you can start asking open-ended questions to help them explore those feelings a bit deeper.
Questions like, what's going on with that? Or how are you feeling about all of this?
Perfect. Open-ended questions allow your teen to share their perspective without feeling pressure to give the right answer or to live up to your expectations. And sometimes simply reflecting back what you're hearing can be really powerful.
Like saying, so you're feeling totally overwhelmed because you have this massive project due, and you're worried about tryouts, and on top of that, your best friend is giving you the silent treatment. That's a lot to handle.
Exactly. It shows them that you're really listening, you're trying to see their world, even if it seems chaotic or confusing from your point of view. And that feeling of being understood, of having someone who truly gets you, that can be incredibly healing and empowering.
It's like you're saying, you're not alone in this. I'm here with you, even if I don't have all the answers. And that's such an important message for any teen to hear, especially one who's trying to make sense of all the ups and downs of adolescence.
Absolutely. And, as we wrap up this deep dive into parent-teen communication, I think it's crucial to remember that there's no magic formula, no one-size-fits-all approach. Every parent-teen relationship is unique, and what works for one family might not work for another.
That's so true. But I think the one thing that all the successful communication strategies we've talked about have in common is empathy. Being able to put yourself in your teen's shoes and see the world through their eyes, even if it's totally different from your own.
And that takes practice and patience. It takes a willingness to let go of always needing to be right. It's about understanding that your teen is on their own path, and your job is to support and guide them, not to try and control every single step.
And even though there will definitely be bumps along the way, arguments, misunderstandings, slam doors, those moments, they can actually be chances to grow closer and understand each other better if you approach them with empathy and a willingness to learn.
Exactly. Parent-teen relationships, they can be messy, they can be complicated, but they can also be so incredibly rewarding, full of love, laughter, and those unexpected moments of grace that make all the tough stuff worth it.
So to all the parents and teens out there who are navigating this wild and amazing landscape, we'll leave you with this. Be kind to yourselves, be curious about each other, and never underestimate the power of a real connection. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.